It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Pure Performance. As always, when you don't hear the sexy voice of Brian Wilson, it's the other voice. It's Andy Grabner solo today because Brian unfortunately couldn't make it. But I try to do a good job in educating you listeners about topics that are relevant in our industry. And today it's about DORA. Now, when I hear DORA, with my background, I have a completely different definition of what DORA means, probably than my guest. And actually, without further ado, now I would like to introduce my guest or welcome my guest to the show, Kay Young. Kay, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Kay, could you... Before going into DORA, could you just quickly tell me a little bit about you? What do you do right now? What's your background? Just curious who our guests are.
Yeah, so I am one of the principal product managers here at Dynatrace, and my focus is very much on ensuring that our product is compliant to various regulations and certifications, making sure that we have a really good product and people can trust that we have everything in place to handle their data accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been in the industry for over, I'm giving my age away, but for over 15 to probably longer years, working on products in various industries and making the best there is of it.
Yeah, very cool. And I think you brought up a very good topic or a word, trust. Trust is a big thing. And now kind of going into DORA, can you give me an explanation, introduction to DORA and telling everybody now that is listening and you're thinking we're talking about the DevOps metrics. This is not about the result of the DevOps Research Institute that happened years ago. This is a different type of DORA, which reminds us how important it is when we use acronyms that we have a clear understanding of what the other person is talking about. So, Kay, can you introduce me to DORA? What is it?
Yes, so DORA, or in this case, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, is a regulation that came out in the EU that is aimed at strengthening IT security and operational resilience of financial institutions and their service providers. So it really is about establishing a framework that requires firms to have, robust and effective information and communication technology, risk management, incident reporting, resilience testing processes, and so forth in place.
Okay, so that's definitely a different type of DORA than I know, because my DORA has 4 metrics. It's typically around deployment frequency, deployment failure rate, and how fast you can react to failure and the lead time. So this is clearly different, but it goes into the trust piece, right? I think that's a big point. People need to trust the software, need to trust the institutions that we work with. You mentioned DORA is really a regulation aimed for the financial institutions and service providers. Why just that, and why not expand? Just out of curiosity, if you know, why is this really focused on these type of industry?
There could be many reasons why they focused on this first, but from my point of view, I think this was really highlighted and in the EU that these are really risky businesses. These are businesses that cannot fail. Mm-hmm. If our financial institutions go down, we are in trouble. Yeah. So let's start with this. Let's really make sure that our financial institutions are robust. These, banks and insurance companies and things like that is built on a solid foundation, and that there is no risk where we can prevent it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned also this is a EU, so European Union regulation. Is it fair to assume that other regions around the world have, let's say, similar regulations for their financial institutions? In case you know, I'm not sure how well of an expert you are.
There definitely is a growing trend where we're seeing this. I'm really looking at DORA framework that the EU has put in place is revolutionary, and it really has opened the world's eyes to how important such frameworks is, and that we have to expand this to other industries and other regions throughout the world. We saw a similar thing happening when GDPR was brought out in the EU, where it was such a groundbreaking thing, and it really influenced the regulations for the rest of the world. So we're keeping a really, eye out on how this will expand to the UK, the US, and other regions in the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, knowing big organizations like the European Union, these regulations, the definitions of the regulations probably take a little while to actually get finalized, get enforced. Can you give us a rough overview of the timelines? How long has this been going on? When is this going to be enforced? When is this really relevant for organizations?
Well, the first version of DORA came out, I'm going to round up a bit, but 2 years ago, where they set the framework in place and say, this is what we want to establish. Let's start working together on this. Since then, there has been addendums, that they've laid out. The latest being in June of this year that they released this, and this regulation is coming into effect from the 17th of January next year. So from January, all organizations will actively start complying to the DORA's framework that needs to put in place. Prior to this, it was, chances were given to, as an industry, let's discuss how do we want to put these frameworks in place. Let's put best practices in place. And then, from January, all action.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's not too far away if you think about it. It's only 4 months to go.
It came quicker than I think everybody expected.
Yeah. And so, without going into all the details about every single piece in the DORA requirements or in the DORA papers, can you give us a little bit of a quick overview of what are some of the requirements that financial organizations need to meet in order not to be, I guess, prosecuted, or they have to pay fines, or whatever are the legal implications?
Yes, so DORA is, it outlines expectations for ICT, or information and telecommunication technology, risk management, the testing and incident reporting. So it's all about advanced monitoring, analytics, and automating processes that can support these efforts. So it gives this really strong framework on how do we become more robust? How can we preemptively, identify risky areas and prevent, risk from occurring? And how do we report and share this knowledge to the rest of the industry where we do find incidents or, things that could affect others in the industry as well?
Mm-hmm. So do you see, and again, this is not my field of expertise, and I'm just asking you, thinking about the financial world, I assume there's a lot of competition. So, and typically those organizations probably don't want to share things amongst each other, or maybe they do, I don't know. But do regulations like this actually force these organizations to share more things amongst each other, especially as it comes to maybe threats, especially as it comes to best practices?
I do think this is one of the pillars of DORA, is that they want to foster this collaboration amongst the industry experts. Without this fostering fostering this collaboration that everybody wants to do, we're not learning, we're not getting stronger, we're not preemptively, hey, I have a vulnerability here, be aware of it, let's fix it, make sure you don't get hit. So this really is an important aspect of DORA that is so unique, and why DORA is more seen as a framework than, this is the strict guidelines you want to put in place. It is about, as a industry, as a community in there, let's see what is those best practices, how can we learn and expand on this all the time.
Thank you. That's good. Now you mentioned, I think, observability earlier, because somebody may ask the question, so why are we with our background at Dynatrace even talking about this? I mean, clearly we've been, our slogan is the world needs software to run perfectly. The world needs software to run securely. Many other observability vendors obviously aim the same thing by helping organizations to get insights into their IT infrastructure, their applications. More and more vendors we see, and also in the open source world, more and more tools come out that focus on security, that focus on risk management. But maybe a quick overview for people that have never connected observability with regulations like DORA. Can you give us a quick overview of what would the role of observability be as organizations need to become compliant?
Yeah, sure. Now, although there are many aspects to keep in mind where DORA and risk management guidelines are concerned, observability is one of those key approaches that can support several aspects of it. It can help by providing visibility into the system performance, the health of the system. It can help establish faster identification and response to potential issues. So it really is a key enabler for continuous monitoring, early detection of risks, and helping to automate responses that need to go out.
Which brings me, like a keyword here, brings me to the next question that I have. Observability is one thing to get insights, but then automation. We've been working pretty hard, at least since I've been in IT, to automate as many things as possible, right? Again, with my background, I typically talk about automating your build process, your testing process, your deployment process. When we talk about automation and the importance of automation in the context of DORA, what are some of the things that people may not consider or that they should consider when it comes around automation? What can be automated?
Well, automation and especially AI-driven insights is, I strongly believe this is really critical to helping you with your DORA compliance. It reduces that manual intervention that needs to be put in place. It is crucial to help you improve your response time. DORA gives very strict guidelines on how quickly you need to notify the relevant authorities on if there is an incident, so that corrective actions can be taken and so forth. So having this automation in place and having these AI-driven insight becomes a critical component in meeting these strict guidelines.
So it's interesting, right, that you are, because I talk and I work with a lot of people around the world, and we always talk about certain KPIs. And again, I always bring it back to my field of expertise. This is more in software engineering, software delivery. So we always talk about how fast can we deploy, how fast can we push out a new fix, and these are typically these metrics and objectives are typically driven by competitive aspects. You want to be competitive in the market, therefore you want to bring out a new feature in a certain amount of time, and therefore your process to deliver and develop needs to be automated as good as possible. In this case, now I hear it like the European Union says, hey, we give you strict guidelines on how fast you need to detect and then notify about any potential issues, I guess, in a certain category, and who you need to contact, what type of information you need to share. Did I get this right? This
is correct, yes. It's all about what is those vulnerabilities that could potentially impact other companies as well, that the industry needs to be aware of. To share that knowledge again that we spoke of earlier, but also to make sure that as your company, you have the relevant response plans and in place to prevent these and fix them should they come up.
Yeah, and now listening to this, and again, this is why I love this podcast, because I learn something new, and sometimes I things pop up in my mind, and I just want to validate if this actually makes sense. But I believe DORA could be a great framework for any organization, essentially. Because I'm sure it provides some good guidance on best practices in general, right? How do you deal as any type of organization that is using digital services How do you detect even problems? How do you deal with them? Who do you report them to? Now with DORA, there's a guidance on financial institutions needing to report to the European Union. But I guess whether it's the European Union or whether you report to your own board or your own, leadership, I guess in the end, any organization should have these thoughts and guidance in place. Yeah.
Yes, no, it's very important. I always like to refer to this CrowdStrike incident that happened a few months ago. Mm-hmm. This really showed why such a framework is so important. If something goes down, what is the consequences of this? So I think the European Union and, putting this DORA regulation in place was really forward thinking and knowing, hey, we need to start planning for these things. This is these type of incidents can happen. We need to make sure we are secure and plan for it.
And I'm not sure what the right English term for it is, but I guess it's critical infrastructure or critical systems, like, as you said, banks, right? We need banks to work because otherwise our society will probably end up in a bad situation. The same is true for I guess, energy, transportation, healthcare. These are all pieces of critical infrastructure and critical services, and they obviously have to take really good care of that everything is resilient, and that they then know in case something goes wrong to really notify the right people so that the right processes can be put into place. Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Hey, one of the things, and you mentioned CrowdStrike, and there have been other incidents. Actually, I think CrowdStrike was not the issue, but the other incidents in the past is where, let's say, third-party software, whether it's third-party libraries, anything in kind of like the software supply chain. There's many parts and many steps in the software delivery process where things can go wrong. Does DORA cover anything of this as well? Is DORA expanding to the whole software delivery lifecycle?
Yes, indeed. It does extend its requirement to those third-party service providers. So this means the financial institutions themselves need to ensure that the entire supply chain is resilient. There is guidelines given on how you determine whether this is a critical supplier versus, just an important supplier. Mm-hmm. And you, as a financial institution, really needs to work with these companies, make sure they have the relevant operational resilience and continuous monitoring in place that you require based on your risk profile and how you want to operate. And it is a very important aspect because we are so reliant on those third-party systems that we use in our applications. We have to make sure the whole supply chain works.
Mm-hmm. And now we don't obviously want to make this, as I said, this is a thought leadership podcast. We want to talk about these topics, but we as Dynatrace, we are a critical, I guess, third-party component to many of our customers who are in the financial space, who operate in the financial space. Does this mean they need to justify and they need to prove that Dynatrace also does everything and we are applying to certain rules? Or how does this work? What if a financial institution uses a tool like Dynatrace? What do they need to kind of report?
Every customer, every financial institution will have their own definition of what they feel is a critical system. So mm-hmm. DORA provides this guideline, but it's ultimately up to the financial institution themselves to determine, okay, what are you? Are you a critical supplier? Are you an important supplier, and so forth? And DORA provides then various requirements that these third-party management systems need to adhere to do this. So we, as Dynatrace, have, work very closely with the financial institutions as well as the regulatory bodies in this case to make sure that what we have in place complies to how we interpret the DORA requirements. Now, DORA is purposely vague. As I say, mm-hmm. It's really about this is the guideline and let's work together and work on that best practices. So we have various conversations with the customers once they've determined, okay, you are a critical system. Show me what you have. Let me make sure this is really what we want in place, and it works for you as well. So we encourage those conversations with our customers and ourselves to make sure that they are happy and they are, supportive of what we've put in place.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks for that. I assumed that's the case, and it's just great to hear it, because many, software vendors like us are critical third-party components in these financial institutions, and observability, what we provide, and also security and automation are just a small piece of the cake of everything. You mentioned earlier that incident reporting is very important. So there's in DORA basically specify how fast you have to report. The question is there? I have a big background in testing, in case you didn't know. So before Dynatrace, I worked for a company where we did a lot of performance testing, a lot of functional testing, and that's why testing is still very dear to my heart. Is there also something where there is a way to test for the robustness? Does the EU specify certain guidelines on how to make sure before maybe a system goes live that they need to fulfill certain test criteria, or is there anything around resiliency testing, risk testing available as well in DORA?
DORA does require you to do resilient testing because, yes, it is very important that you make sure you have a plan in place, you have procedures in place, and that you do regular, resilience testing, disaster recovery, and so forth, and that you make sure that this is then also applied to your third-party frameworks. So again, it provides guidelines, and it's up to the financial institution to then determine how risky the system is, how critical it is in their whole infrastructure, what is their acceptable limits in there, and what does it need to comply to, and what is their backup plan if it goes down. What can they do? So this is really one of those very important things that organizations need to have appropriate processes, documentation, and governance in place for.
Mm-hmm. Cool. First, okay, thank you so much for giving me the overview, because clearly there is more to DORA than I thought. First of all, also it's not the DORA the Explorer, and not the DORA the DevOps metrics that are out there. By the time of this recording, so we are about 4 months away from that regulation to take effect. And I don't know if you just from your personal experience now, because you have obviously worked in this field over the last couple of months, you've written a couple of blog posts. So folks, if you're listening to this and you want to read up more, in the description of the podcast, you'll find the links where you can learn more about DORA and also what the role of observability is. But are there any discussions that you've been involved with recently that stand out? Any topics that people are, let's say, most stressful about? Like, what are some challenges in the adoption of DORA that are more prominent than others? And can we just highlight maybe some additional resources?
I think I will say there's many topics that's going on in DORA. Really, the ones that I've been involved in quite actively is all about how can we help, and how do we ensure that we have this really speedy, refined process for incident reporting. How can we share this knowledge and things like that? Because it's one thing to share with, the regulatory body that I have to report my incidents to, that I have to have, this is the template that I use, this is the information that I give. And customers really struggle to, how do I deep dive? How do I find out what is this root cause? How do I get this quick enough that I can report this? And then how do I share this with the industry as well. So this is topics that's ongoing and discussions that's ongoing, because this is the framework that not everybody has in place. Having those discussions with, my peers in the industry is also not something that is necessarily natural. This is now new things that's being put in place, and we want to have those conversations and we want to discuss it with each other. So this is quite a hot topic at the moment, where I've been involved in quite a few interesting conversations. How can we put this in place? How can we become more collaborative in this? And how can we get faster and do this easier? Because it can be quite an administrative burden for these compliance officers that now need to do this. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this pans out and how people do this.
Yeah. And maybe last kind of open question for you is, coming back to a little bit of Dynatrace, because we are actively in you and several teams are involved into this. What is if people are listening to this and they still say, okay, Dynatrace observability vendor, but what do we bring to the table, not just from a tooling perspective, but just in general as an organization? What do we bring to the table for organizations that are currently facing the challenge that in 4 months they need to apply to those regulations, and as they become active, that they can then continuously comply to it? What do we as Dynatrace bring to the table that might be something that people don't think of when they think about yet another observability vendor?
Oh, there's so much that we are working actively on in order to support our customers. So from, what Dynatrace is doing is obviously making sure that from a Dynatrace product perspective, we have everything in place so that customers, have that trust we can be used in their, operations. But we're also working on quite a lot of things, supporting customers with their compliance needs as well. So yes, from a observability point of view, we have these robust systems. We can help with these root cause analysis and things like that. And we're doing quite a lot of work on our security side as well. What can we help you with there? What automated checks can we put in place? And I can't go into too much detail, but we are putting a new app in place that will help customers with their observability as well as security frameworks, and helping them with those technical requirements that DORA has. How can we help you in one location automate those tasks, having the visibility on where your risks might be that you need to put in place, and giving you those automated reports so that you have peace in mind that at least from the technical side, and you are covered. You don't have to worry about that. You deal with what you need to put in place process-wise. We will help you with the rest. So more things are coming.
Cool. Thank you. And so it's always good to leave with a little bit of a surprise, and there's obviously more that can be done, more that we will do. Kay, did we forget anything? Because if people are listening to this, they came in maybe initially and saw DORA. I'm sure I know about the stuff that Andy has been talking about for years, but now all of a sudden they learned something completely new that they may not even, that will hopefully be relevant for them. Anything that we missed in the conversation that we want to leave with?
Nothing springs to mind right this second. I think we covered it a lot. This is expanding conversations. There's new things that's gonna come up. There's new industries where this gonna apply to, and it's always good to keep an eye out on that and seeing how we can expand and help.
Cool. Okay, in this case, I want to say thank you so much for spending the time and recording this podcast. It's always great to see people like you actually really be willing to speak, talk about your experiences, educate us on new topics that we might not be too familiar with. And we will add all the links to your blog posts. If you're okay, we're also adding a link to your LinkedIn profile in the description, so people can also follow up with you in case they have questions. And let's keep fingers crossed that as January 17 comes around the corner, that all the organizations out there in the financial space have implemented everything that they could to implement this new framework and apply all the rules and do all the reporting.
Yes, no, thank you for having me.
Thank you.